On a quiet evening in a suburban neighborhood, a routine traffic stop spirals into chaos when two overzealous cops target a black family, oblivious to the fact that the father, a decorated Delta Force commander, is not a man to be trifled with. What begins as a minor misunderstanding escalates into a tense confrontation, exposing deep-seated biases and the unyielding strength of a man trained to protect at all costs. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the quiet streets of Maplewood, a small town just outside Raleigh, North Carolina. Marcus Thompson, a 42-year-old father of two, was driving his family home from a weekend barbecue at his sister's house. His wife, Alicia, sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone, while their teenage children, Kayla and Jordan, chatted in the back of the family's black SUV. The Thompsons were a tight-knit family, known in their community for their warmth and generosity. Marcus, a man of few words but commanding presence, had spent years serving his country in ways few could comprehend. His military career as a Delta Force commander was a closely guarded chapter of his life, known only to Alicia and a handful of trusted confidants. As Marcus turned onto Elm Street, a police cruiser's lights flashed in his rearview mirror. The sharp wail of a siren cut through the evening air. Marcus's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm as he glanced at Alicia. "Here we go," he muttered, pulling the SUV to the side of the road. Alicia placed a hand on his arm, her eyes steady but wary. In the back seat, Kayla, 16, stopped mid-sentence, her brow furrowing. Jordan, 14, leaned forward, his voice low. "What did we do, Dad?" "Nothing," Marcus said firmly, his tone reassuring but laced with an edge. "Just stay calm, okay? Let me handle this." He adjusted his posture, hands visible on the steering wheel, a habit born from years of navigating high-stakes situations. Alicia reached back to squeeze Kayla's hand, a silent signal to stay quiet. The family had been through stops like this before, too many times in fact. Each one carried the same unspoken tension, the same unspoken question. Would this be routine, or would it turn into something more? Two officers approached the SUV, their silhouettes stark against the flashing lights. Officer Daniel Hayes, a stocky man in his early 30s with a buzz cut, led the way, his hand resting casually on his holster. His partner, Officer Ryan Kessler, younger and leaner, followed close behind, his eyes scanning the vehicle with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Hayes tapped on Marcus's window, motioning for him to roll it down. Marcus complied, his movements deliberate. "Good evening, sir," Hayes said, his tone clipped but polite. "Do you know why we pulled you over?" Marcus met the officer's gaze, his expression neutral. "No, sir, I don't. Was I speeding?" Hayes's lips twitched, not quite a smirk, but close. "Your taillight's out. Left side. You aware of that?" Marcus's brow furrowed slightly. He knew the SUV was in pristine condition. He maintained it meticulously, a holdover from his military days. A broken taillight? Unlikely. But he kept his tone even. "No, officer, I wasn't aware. I'll get it checked tomorrow." Hayes nodded slowly, his eyes drifting over the interior of the SUV. Kessler, standing by the passenger side, peered through Alicia's window, his flashlight flicking over her face, then to the kids in the back. Kayla shifted uncomfortably under the beam, clutching her phone. Jordan's hands clenched into fists, but he stayed silent, his eyes locked on his father. "License and registration," Hayes said, his voice carrying a hint of impatience. Marcus reached for the glove compartment, moving slowly, announcing his actions. "I'm getting the registration now." He handed over the documents, along with his driver's license, which listed his address as a modest home in Maplewood. Hayes took them, glancing at the license before passing it to Kessler, who began running it through their system. "Mind stepping out of the vehicle, sir?" Hayes asked, his tone shifting, less a request than a command. Alicia's head snapped up. "Why does he need to do that?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Marcus shot her a quick look, a silent plea to let him handle it. She pressed her lips together but didn't back down, her eyes fixed on Hayes. "Just routine, ma'am," Hayes replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. We need to make sure everything checks out. Marcus opened the door and stepped out, his 6 feet 2 inches frame unfolding with a quiet authority. He stood straight, shoulders squared, his hands visible at his sides. Years of training had honed his ability to project calm under pressure, but inside, his mind was racing, assessing the situation. He knew the statistics. Black men were far more likely to face escalation during traffic stops. He also knew his own capabilities, skills honed in the most dangerous corners of the world. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was his family, and his priority was keeping them safe. Hayes gestured toward the rear of the SUV. Let's take a look at that taillight. Marcus followed, his steps measured, aware of Kessler lingering near the vehicle, watching Alicia and the kids. As they reached the back, Hayes tapped the left taillight with his flashlight. It flickered faintly, then held steady, fully functional. Marcus's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. Looks fine to me, Marcus said evenly. Hayes grunted, his expression unreadable. Must have been a loose connection. Still need to run a full check. You got anything in the vehicle we should know about? Weapons, anything like that? No, sir, Marcus replied, his voice steady. Just my family, and some leftovers from a barbecue. Hayes's eyes lingered on Marcus, sizing him up. You seem awfully calm for someone in this situation. Marcus didn't flinch. No reason not to be, officer. The air grew heavier as Hayes's posture stiffened. Kessler, now back at the driver's side, leaned closer to the window, addressing Alicia. Ma'am, we're going to need you and the kids to step out too. Alicia's voice was sharp now, though controlled. For a taillight? You're serious? Just procedure, Kessler said, but his tone was less convincing than Hayes's. Kayla's voice piped up from the back. This is ridiculous. We didn't do anything. Kayla, Marcus said firmly, turning his head slightly. Stay calm. His eyes flicked to Alicia, a silent communication passing between them. She nodded, unbuckling her seatbelt, motioning for the kids to do the same. The family stepped out, standing on the side of the road as passing cars slowed, drivers craning their necks to watch. Kessler began a cursory search of the SUV, his flashlight sweeping over the seats, the floorboards, the glove compartment. Hayes kept his focus on Marcus, his hand still near his holster. You got a military vibe about you, Hayes said, almost casually. You serve? Marcus nodded once. Yes, sir. Army. Retired. Hayes raised an eyebrow. What kind? Desk job or something else? Something else, Marcus said, his tone clipped. He wasn't about to volunteer details, not here, not now. His time in Delta Force was classified, his missions buried under layers of secrecy. But the way Hayes was studying him, the officer seemed to sense there was more to Marcus than met the eye. Kessler emerged from the SUV, holding a small pocket knife Marcus kept in the center console for camping trips. Found this, he said, holding it up like a trophy. That's a utility knife, Marcus said, his voice steady. Legal. For camping. Kessler smirked. We'll see about that. You mind if we take a closer look at the vehicle? Full search. Alicia stepped forward, her patience fraying. This is harassment. You have no probable cause for this. The taillight's working. Our papers are in order. What's the problem? Hayes turned to her, his expression hardening. Ma'am, you need to step back and let us do our job. Your job. Alicia shot back. Your job is to protect and serve, not to pull us out of our car for no reason. Jordan, standing behind his mother, muttered under his breath, This is some bullshit. Hayes's head snapped toward him, his eyes narrowing. What did you say, kid? Hayes took a step toward Jordan, who froze, his bravado fading under the officer's glare. Marcus moved instinctively, positioning himself between Hayes and his son. Officer, he's just a kid, Marcus said, his voice low but firm. Let's keep this professional. Hayes's jaw clenched, his hand inching closer to his holster. You don't tell me how to do my job, he said, his voice cold. You and your family need to cooperate, or this gets a lot harder. The tension was palpable now, the air thick with the potential for escalation. Marcus's mind flashed to his training, situations in hostile territories where a single wrong move could mean disaster. But this wasn't a war zone. This was his home, his family, and he wasn't about to let it spiral out of control. Still, he could feel the weight of Hayes' suspicion, the unspoken assumptions fueling this encounter. It wasn't about a taillight. It never had been. Alicia's voice broke the silence, steady but laced with anger. We know our rights. You need a warrant for a full search, and you haven't given us a valid reason for any of this. Kessler, still holding the pocket knife, exchanged a glance with Hayes. We can call this in as suspicious behavior, he said, his tone almost taunting. Give us a reason to bring you all in. Marcus's eyes locked onto Hayes, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You don't want to do that, officer. Hayes bristled, taking a step closer. Is that a threat? No, Marcus said, his tone calm but unyielding. It's a suggestion. You're making a mistake here. For a moment, the two men stood locked in a silent standoff, Hayes' hand hovering near his weapon, Marcus's posture relaxed but radiating quiet authority. Alicia and the kids stood frozen, their eyes darting between Marcus and the officers. The situation teetered on the edge, one wrong word or move away from disaster. Then, a crackle came from Hayes' radio. Unit 14, status check. A dispatcher's voice cut through. Hayes hesitated, then stepped back, grabbing the radio to respond. Unit 14, all clear. Traffic stop, Elm Street. Kessler, still gripping the pocket knife, looked to Hayes for direction. Hayes' eyes flicked back to Marcus, assessing him one last time. We're letting you off with a warning, he said finally, though his tone suggested it wasn't his choice. Fix that taillight. Marcus nodded once, his expression unreadable. Yes, sir. The officers returned to their cruiser, their movements slow, almost reluctant. As they drove off, the family stood in silence, the weight of the encounter settling over them. Alicia pulled Kayla and Jordan close, her hands trembling slightly. Marcus watched the cruiser disappear, his mind already replaying every detail, every word, every movement. Dad, Jordan said quietly, his voice shaking. Why'd they do that? Marcus turned to his son, his expression softening but resolute. Some people see what they want to see, not what's there. But we're okay. That's what matters. Alicia met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mix of relief and anger. This isn't over, she said softly. They can't keep doing this.